My name is Daniel. I'm 32 years old, and I've survived encounters with evil that I still don't fully understand. But what's worse than surviving them is understanding the pattern. I've realized that danger doesn't strike once and disappear. Sometimes it hunts. Sometimes it follows you across years in different places. Sometimes you meet predators in plain sight and don't recognize them until it's almost too late. I'm going to tell you 3 stories, 3 separate incidents that happened years apart. 3 times when I was completely vulnerable. And by the end, you'll understand why I never ignore my gut instinct anymore. If you love true horror stories about real encounters with genuine danger, hit like and subscribe right now. And keep listening, because the moment I realized there was a stranger at my tent will change how you think about your own safety forever. I need to start with when I was 12 years old. I was living in Georgia back then, and our house had this massive backyard that every kid in the neighborhood wanted to come play in. We're talking 2 acres of property surrounded by woods on 3 sides. There was a trampoline in one corner, an above-ground pool, a detached 3-car garage, and a hot tub near the house. There was also plenty of open grass to play any sport we wanted. Soccer, baseball, football, anything. We even played hide-and-seek at night, which we called manhunt. It was the coolest backyard in the entire area. One Friday in 6th grade, my friends and I decided to have a camp-out sleepover in that backyard. There was me, my friend Mike, another friend I'll call Michael, and a kid named Jason. We all got permission from our parents. They dropped us off around 5 o'clock so we could play some sports before the sun went down. We set up 2 soccer nets and we played 2-on-2 for about half an hour. Then we switched to baseball for another 30 minutes. By the time we finished, we were exhausted but energized with that excited energy that only kids have before a sleepover. My parents ordered pizza for us, and we ate around 6:30 or 7 o'clock as the sun was starting to go down. When we finished eating, it was time to set up the tents. I'd been a Boy Scout, and we had just recently learned how to set up tents, so I did most of the work while my friends helped. By the time we finished, it was decently dark outside, but backyard lights were on, giving everything a nice amber glow. It was perfect for what we wanted to do next. We wanted to play manhunt in the dark. The game was simple. We would divide into pairs. Mike and I would hide first while Michael and Jason would hunt us. Our goal was to get back to the home base point, which was the back door of the house. You weren't allowed to camp by the door waiting for someone. That was against the rules. The trampoline was in a far corner of the yard before the woods started. That's where I decided to hide. I crawled under it and positioned myself so I could see out, but hopefully nobody could see me. When the hunters started looking, they had to blow a whistle to signal that the hunt had begun. I heard that whistle, and I settled in to wait it out. I watched Michael and Jason in the distance, looking around the backyard, searching for us. I was waiting for the right moment to make my move toward home base. My plan was to sprint over to the hot tub, which was right next to the house. If I could hide behind that, I could make a straight line run to the back door and win the game. I waited and watched. Both Michael and Jason had their backs turned to me, looking in different directions of the yard. That was my moment. I sprinted as fast as I could toward the hot tub. As I got right behind it and ducked down to hide, I heard something that made me freeze. One of the trash bins on the side of the house almost toppled over. It sounded like something had bumped into it. At the exact same moment, the motion-detecting light on the side of the house turned on. The light illuminated the side yard clearly. The hot tub was right by that corner, so the light hit exactly where I was hiding. I went to peer around the corner to see what had caused the trash bin to almost tip over. That's when I saw him. There was a tall person dressed completely in dark clothes speed walking away in the direction of the woods. He was moving with purpose. He was moving like he didn't want to be seen. And before he reached the tree line, he disappeared into the darkness of the woods. It definitely wasn't my dad. My dad was inside the house. This was someone else. Someone who shouldn't have been there. I didn't hesitate. I ran back to my friends and called the game off immediately. We all went inside and I told my dad what I'd seen. He came out and looked around the woods for a few minutes with a flashlight. He checked the street for any unusual cars. He didn't find anything. He said we should probably sleep inside tonight, which obviously disappointed us. We had been looking forward to sleeping in the tents. So we went inside and played video games on the PlayStation instead. I described to my friends what I had seen. Just some tall guy walking into the woods on the side of the house after apparently bumping into one of our trash bins. We talked about going back outside and sleeping in the tents anyway, since they were already set up. I mean, what were the odds that whoever that was would still be out there hours later? After we finished playing the game around midnight or 1 in the morning, we decided to go back outside. We did it quietly because we didn't want to wake my dad up. It wasn't like we were hiding the fact that we were going back out there. We just didn't want to advertise it. Each of us had a sleeping bag. Mike and I shared one tent, while Michael and Jason shared the other. We were in the tents joking around and yelling things between the tents to each other. Then we started to quiet down and try to actually fall asleep. I wasn't asleep yet, but Mike seemed to be drifting off. That's when I started hearing walking sounds in the grass nearby. The footsteps were approaching the tent, getting closer. My heart started beating faster. Then the zipper to the tent began to open. Slowly, deliberately. I looked up and I saw someone peering inside. My first thought was that it was my dad coming to check on us. But as I took a closer look in the face, I realized something was wrong. This wasn't my dad. This was a complete stranger, a man who looked to be around my dad's age, maybe in his 40s or 50s. And he was looking directly at me. It looked like he was about to come into the tent. He was about to climb inside where I was. That's when I screamed. I screamed bloody murder like a little girl. I didn't care how I sounded. I just screamed. Mike woke up immediately and started screaming as well. The man grabbed our ankles. He actually grabbed us and said to be quiet. But the moment he realized he was about to be exposed, the moment he understood that other kids were about to come running out of the other tent, he gave up. He let go of our ankles and he left the tent and disappeared into the darkness. I yelled at my friends to run inside the house. As we were running toward the back door, my dad was already coming out in response to our screams. I told him I didn't know which direction the man went, but that the same person from earlier was back. He was back, and he had tried to get into our tent. My dad ran around the yard screaming and taunting the person to come back if he had any courage. We heard him yelling from inside the living room. My mom immediately called the police. When the police officer showed up, he took my recount of what happened, and he made a police report. That was pretty much it. But at least there was a report on file, so the police would be aware of a creep in the neighborhood. I'm not sure if that man ever came back to our property or if he ever got in trouble for something similar. But that incident was traumatizing, and it showed me that predators don't always work alone. They test you first, they come back, they're persistent. Years passed. I thought maybe I'd just been incredibly unlucky that one time. I graduated high school. I went to college. I tried to move on with my life. But then something happened that reminded me that danger doesn't just disappear. It finds you again. It was sometime in 2019. I was at a friend's house deep in the woods. Her name was Em. Her house was so deep in the woods that everywhere you looked, there was nothing but trees. Their nearest neighbor was about a half-mile away. On the back side of her house was a cliff that led down to the ocean. It was an isolated property, a beautiful property, but also a vulnerable property. The night started off really well. My friend Sam was there too. We played truth or dare and hide and seek and other teenage games. It was getting pretty late, but we decided to go on a walk down the gravel road that led to the other houses. We asked Em's mom first, and she said it was fine. So we started walking. After about 10 to 15 minutes of walking, we saw a man coming toward us on the road. At first, we weren't thinking much of it. Maybe he was just taking an evening walk like we were. But something about him seemed off. He was wearing very thick clothing. I'm talking snow gear, heavy jackets, multiple layers. But it wasn't winter. It was warm outside. It was around 60 degrees. It was way too warm for all those clothes. All three of us looked at each other as we passed him, and that's when it hit us. The stench. The absolutely disgusting smell coming off that guy. It was the worst thing I had ever smelled in my entire life. It was so putrid, so horrible, that my friend had to take a deep breath, almost like she had been holding her breath the entire time she was near him. Another friend ran into the woods and almost threw up. At that point, we decided it was best to head back to the house. The friend who almost got sick was begging to go back anyway. We all agreed it was the best decision, so we turned around and started walking back toward Em's house. But then we passed the man again. This time, we tried to hold our breath as we went by him. But when we looked back, something had changed. He was no longer walking in the opposite direction. He was following us. The disgusting smelling man was walking behind us now, and he was getting closer. We didn't say anything. We just started to speed up. We still had about a mile to go to get back to Em's house. As we sped up, so did he. He was matching our pace. He was deliberately following us. We looked at each other, our eyes communicating the fear we were all feeling. We picked up our pace even more. We were almost jogging now. But of course he sped up even more. He was keeping up with us. He was closing the distance. Now at this point, we were running. Full out running down the gravel road back toward the house. That's when my friend Sam looked back. And that's when she screamed. A blood-curdling scream that made my blood run cold. The man was sprinting at us at full speed, and he had something in his grasp. Something that looked like a knife. Something sharp. He was running at us with a weapon. All three of us started screaming at the top of our lungs as we were sprinting down the road. Our screams were loud and primal, and they seemed to have an effect on him. When he heard us screaming like that, he stopped chasing us. He just stopped dead in his tracks. But he didn't turn around. He didn't leave. He just stood still watching as we ran away. We didn't stop to see what his intentions were. We just ran straight back to Em's house, and we slammed the door shut behind us. Once we were inside, breathing hard and shaking from adrenaline, we made a decision not to tell Em's parents what had happened. They were already asleep, and we didn't want to wake them up and cause a huge scene. We just went to the living room, and we set up our sleeping areas. We told ourselves that everything would be fine. The man was gone. We were safe now. We were inside the house. A few hours passed. It was around 2 a.m. now. We were watching something on the TV. I can't remember what, but it was some kind of horror movie. I was sitting on one of the couches that was positioned right at the window. Em's house had a lot of windows on the back side overlooking the view of the ocean and the cliff. It was pitch black outside. All you could hear was the sound of waves and occasional wind. Then I heard something. Footsteps outside the window, right next to where I was sitting. They sounded very close, very real. I told my friends what I heard. Em said it was probably the deer that always comes by. She had been feeding this same deer for 2 years now, and it would come right up to that very window. I got pretty excited thinking about it. This meant the deer might come right up to my hand. I could pet it. I decided to look out the window to see if I could see the deer, but it was too dark. I couldn't see anything. The moonlight wasn't bright enough. So I suggested we go outside to pet the deer, but Em and Sam both said no. They reminded me about what had happened earlier on the road. The man with the knife, the man who had chased us. They were right. We shouldn't go outside. So we went back to watching the movie. Another hour passed. We were all getting tired. We turned off the TV and we got under our blankets to try to sleep. It was around 4:30 in the morning now. Em and Sam were fast asleep, but I felt like I couldn't rest. Something in my gut was telling me not to go to sleep. Something felt wrong. I decided to look outside the window again. The moon was just bright enough that I could see the ocean and the cliff beyond it. I spent a few minutes just staring out at the dark water. And that's when my eye caught something. Movement. In the woods. Over to the left. Something was moving in the shadows. I turned my head that way, but I saw nothing. But I knew I'd seen something moving. So I grabbed a flashlight that was on the bookshelf and I pointed it in the direction of where I'd seen the movement. This was probably the worst decision I could have ever made, because when I did, I saw him again, the man from the road. But this time, he didn't have the snow gear on. He was completely shirtless. His pale skin was visible in the moonlight, and I wasn't about to find out what else he didn't have on. I tried to wake up Em and Sam. I was shaking them, telling them to wake up. I told them what I saw. Sam woke up, but Em was a deep sleeper. I told Sam to look outside. But when we both looked at the window, he was gone. He had vanished. Sam looked at me with an angry expression, like I was just messing with her or making things up. I told her I wasn't lying, but she didn't believe me. She went back to bed, and I was left laying there in the dark, alone, terrified. It was now about 4:30 in the morning. The sun wouldn't be up for hours. I didn't sleep at all. I just laid there waiting for something to happen. And then it did. I heard a knock on the door. I almost jumped off the couch in terror. A knock on the door. In the middle of the night. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I knew I shouldn't open it. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me not to go to the door, but my curiosity got the best of me. I walked over to the door and I looked out through the peephole. I saw nothing. The outside was empty. There was nobody there. I went back to the couch and I threw my blanket over my head. I tried to make myself feel safe in the darkness. I eventually fell asleep, but it was a restless, nightmare-filled sleep. And I woke up at around 5 in the morning in a cold sweat. Something wasn't right. My body was shaking uncontrollably. And then I smelled it. That familiar stench. That disgusting smell. The smell of the man from the road, and at that exact moment I heard footsteps coming toward me. I screamed. I flicked on the flashlight in a panic, and as I did I saw him, the man from earlier, standing in the corner of the room, just standing there, watching me. My scream woke up Em and Sam, and they screamed too. And as we screamed, the man bolted out of the house. He ran. Em's parents came running down the stairs in response to our screaming. After a few minutes of us all trying to process what had happened, we told them everything. M's mum called the police immediately, while M's dad grabbed a shotgun and walked down the road trying to find the man, but he was gone. He had disappeared into the darkness. When the police finally arrived and got all of our statements, they launched an investigation. They searched the woods, they searched the property, and they eventually found him. They found the man. And when they searched his property, when they searched that old shed that we had been daring each other to go into, they found 5 dead bodies, 5 full bodies wrapped up and stored in that shed. And that stench that had been on that man's body wasn't just any stench. It was the smell of decaying flesh. It was the smell of death. If things hadn't gone the way they did that night, if we'd gone outside when the footsteps happened, if we had investigated further, my friends and I would have ended up in that shed. We would have been 6 and 7. We would have been his newest victims. I went home after the police got our statements. My parents didn't tell me much when I got home. They just hugged me for what felt like hours. After that night, I wasn't allowed at sleepovers anymore. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone. And only now, years later, am I starting to understand just how close I came to being murdered. But there was a third incident. A third time when I found myself in danger with someone who seemed normal on the surface. Someone who seemed like a regular person, but who was actually deeply disturbed and deeply dangerous. This happened years later when I was working in risk management for a big bank in Manhattan. I met a lot of cool people through my job. I would go out to happy hours with my co-workers all the time. In 2019, a new guy named Sebastian was transferred to our office. I met him on his first day. He seemed very sociable and talkative. He was always laughing and smiling. He went out to happy hour with us that first Friday, and he truly was the life of the party. He was always talking about his experiences, about all the places he had been, about the things he had done. There was not a dull moment when Sebastian was around. Eventually, Sebastian and I became friendly. We would go out together on weekends once in a while. But the more I got to know him, the more I started to realize that a lot of what he said might have been fabrications. His stories about beautiful women he had allegedly been with seemed exaggerated. His stories about hanging out with celebrities seemed made up. But he was easy to hang out with, and he made me laugh, so I just took everything he said with a grain of salt. One day, Sebastian invited me to go with him and his sister to their condo in St. Pete Beach, Florida. His mom was very wealthy and owned a place in Beverly Hills, Colorado, and St. Pete. She would be at the condo that particular weekend, so Sebastian said it would be fun. I invited my little brother Tyler to come along too. We all took the same flight. I met Sebastian's sister at the airport. She seemed pretty interesting. She was a bit quirky. Hard to explain, but there was something about her that felt off. The condo was actually really nice. It had 3 bedrooms. I'd never been in a condo with 3 bedrooms before. Sebastian and his sister took a room each, so Tyler and I shared a room. I told Tyler that if we met any girls, he would be sleeping on the couch. Since we landed late, it was past beach hour. We went out to some beach bars, which were pretty cool. There was an older crowd. But Sebastian was getting really drunk really fast. For some reason, he was downing shots and getting aggressive. This was the first time I had seen him like this. He was going up to every girl he saw and drunkenly hitting on them. And 9 times out of 10, the girls seemed really uncomfortable. Tyler and I laughed until it wasn't funny anymore. It became embarrassing being seen with him. At one point, a bigger guy got in his face for talking to his girl. I had to pull Sebastian away and apologize to the guy to de-escalate the situation. But as we walked away, Sebastian pushed me and called me a piece of trash for not having his back. Tyler and I told him to just calm down. Even his sister was telling him to relax. But Sebastian stormed off, presumably back to the condo. His sister followed without saying anything. Tyler and I stayed and finished our drinks. These girls came up to us and asked how we knew Sebastian. We made a joke of it and actually got their numbers. They said they were going downtown later if we wanted to meet up. After that, I texted Sebastian asking where he and his sister went. He texted back immediately that they went back to the condo. Tyler and I walked back to the condo and let ourselves in. We expected Sebastian to be angry, but instead, the second we walked in, he jumped off the couch all excited with a big smile on his face, asking if we were going out tonight or what. He was still definitely really drunk. I told him, yeah, we should chill out here for a bit first. Then I told him about the girls' numbers we got. Sebastian asked how many girls. I said 2. His smile disappeared immediately. Then Tyler, for some reason, told him that the girls came up to us after he left asking how we knew him. I think Tyler was trying to make a joke out of it, trying to playfully rip on Sebastian a bit, but it was a mistake. Sebastian stormed away into his room and literally slammed the door shut. I realized he must be extremely bipolar or something. I was getting off vibes from both him and his sister. I whispered to his sister asking if he was always like this. She replied in a very standoffish way, like, what? I said, never mind. This was extremely uncomfortable. Tyler and I chilled in our room for a while. Sebastian never came out. I went over and knocked on his door asking if he wanted to come out with us. He didn't answer, so we eventually ordered an Uber without him to meet those 2 girls at some big clubby bar. As I was getting drunker, Sebastian started blowing up my phone with messages. Where are you? How could you just leave me here? Your stuff is going in the street. Don't come back. I don't know why I invited you here. I showed Tyler and the girls and everyone was concerned. Something was definitely wrong with Sebastian and he was showing it now. As much fun as we were having with the girls, we had to Uber back to the condo before Sebastian really did something stupid. When we got back, Sebastian was just sitting on the couch alone, staring at the wall. I asked if he was okay. He looked at me, then looked away and said, yeah, hope you had fun. Then he got up and went to his room and shut the door. Tyler and I went to bed. We stayed up talking to each other for like half an hour about Sebastian and about life in general. Then suddenly we heard footsteps on the wood floor outside. We stopped talking immediately. The footsteps came over to the door and then stopped. Both of us heard it. I whispered to Tyler that Sebastian was right outside the door. Tyler whispered back, I know. He must have had his ear up to the door listening to us. We didn't say a word. A literal 5 minutes went by before we heard his footsteps walk away from the door. Then we heard him talking outside. He was laughing and saying things, but we didn't hear his sister saying anything. I wanted to see who he was talking to, so I crept over to the door and opened it slightly. I looked into the living room, which was dark. Sebastian was standing in the corner, leaning on the wall with one hand and his head down. He was laughing and talking to himself. He was saying things like, Joe is always such a stupid jerk. And then he laughed again. My name is Joe. I closed the door quietly and went back to the bed. I whispered to Tyler what I had just seen. His response was simply, what the hell? I told him we should leave tomorrow morning and get a hotel. He agreed immediately. We tried to go to sleep, but the talking and laughing outside went on for another 10 to 15 minutes. When it finally stopped, we heard the footsteps come outside the door again. Stop for a minute, then go to his room. and then we heard his door shut. Finally, we felt comfortable going to sleep. But it was a tense sleep. I fell asleep pretty quickly, but I woke up probably only 20 minutes later. I sat up immediately, knowing something had woken me up. I looked at the door, and in front of it was Sebastian, just standing there, in the darkness, watching us sleep. I jumped and said, "Yo, what are you doing?" That's when he lunged at the bed, screaming. He was trying to strangle me. He was yelling that I was a piece of trash. Tyler had to grab him off of me and throw him into the corner of the room. Sebastian yelled that I sucked, that he had invited me there just for me to crap on his life and talk trash about him to his sister. I tried to calm him down and rationalize, but there was no rationalizing with Crazy. We packed our stuff immediately and called an Uber to a hotel where we stayed until Sunday. Then we flew home. I saw Sebastian in the office the following few weeks, but he always avoided talking to me or looking at me. And he eventually transferred to a different office, probably because of me. Looking back on all three of these incidents now, I see the pattern. Predators come in different forms. Some are strangers in the darkness. Some hide their true nature until it's almost too late. Some work in your office and seem normal until they're not. But they all have one thing in common. They test boundaries, they push limits, they see what they can get away with, and if you're not paying attention, if you're not trusting your gut, they will find you. That's what these three stories have taught me. That's why I never ignore my instincts anymore. And that's why I'm telling you these stories now. Because somewhere out there, someone is reading this and they're currently in a situation where their gut is telling them something is wrong. And I want them to know that their gut is right. That feeling is there for a reason. That intuition has kept me alive, and it can keep you alive too.